Welcome back to the Sunny Stampin' Studio. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this birthday card for my son who's going to be turning 10. Now, if you don't have any boys that you need to make a birthday card for, you can easily adapt this layout to create a girl card. Just simply change the colors and the paper you choose and the accessories, and you've now got a card that's perfect for a little girl. Now, the first thing you're going to have to do is to ink up your chipboard. To do that, you're going to need a scrap piece of paper, your chipboard number, and some dado adhesive. Now, put some dado onto your scrap paper and then take your number and make sure you stick it down well to the dado. The dado is a temporary adhesive that'll hold the chipboard in place and keep it from shifting while you're inking it. Now, to ink chipboard, you do need a pigment ink. This is a slower drying ink that's much more opaque than our dye-based inks. So here I'm using the silver ink. Now, what you're going to want to do is to press it all over your number until it picks up the silver color. Once that's done, you can go ahead and let that dry. I've now taken a piece of Whisper White cardstock. This is 2 1/4 inches by 3 inches, and I stamped my greeting using the A Little Birthday Cheer stamp set, and I used the robot from the Lots of Bots stamp set. And it was stamped in basic black ink. You can also use StazOn ink as well. So the next thing I want to do is to color him in. So I'm going to grab another piece of scrap paper so I can use it to clean my blender pen. As you can see, I'm just using the lids of my ink, my classic ink pads to pick up the color from. I have my blender pen and I just want to make sure I scribble it onto my scrap paper and that the color runs clear. Now, once I'm confident the color's clear, I can now go ahead and pick up my first color. And I'm using here Taken with Teal, and I'm just pulling it across the body of the robot. Now, if you find that your color is coming across too lightly, simply close the lid of your ink, give it a good squish, open it up again, and you've now reloaded your ink. So you can now go back and grab some ink. Now, when working with a blender pen, you don't want to work in one area for too long, because otherwise it's going to saturate the paper and you'll get the piling of the paper. So if you're going to go back to an area like I'm going to need to do with his body, what you're going to want to do is to just go ahead, color other areas, and then once the area you want to go back over has had a chance to dry, you can then go back over it again. So I'm now picking up some more Taken with Teal ink, and I'm going to pull that across his body. Now, when working over a larger area like this, you do want to make sure that you work fairly quickly because you don't want the ink to soak into the paper too quickly. So I'm now going to go and pick up some of my pumpkin pie, and I want to use it to color in the bag. I'm going to use it to color in the stripes in his hat, and I'm going to use it to color his balloon. So as you can see, each time in between colors, you want to make sure that you clean off your blender pen very well. So now I'm picking up my basic gray ink. The nice thing about when you are working with blender pens and classic ink like this is it allows you to get a bit of a watercolor effect to your coloring. You'll notice that as you color, the color starts to fade. So it's not just one solid tone of color. And then, of course, as the color starts to fade off the tip of your blender pen, as you can see what I'm doing, I'm just picking up more color on the lid of my ink pad. So I'm reloading my blender pen, and then you just go back and continue coloring. So I've now got my image colored. So you can set aside your inks and your blender pen. Now I went ahead and stamped this on a second piece of scrap paper, and then I cut out the pieces and mounted them on dimensionals. Oh, I'm just looking at my robot. It looks like I missed a piece here. Missed his legs. There we go. And so I cut out his body pieces. And, oops, I have to do this straight on because I can't really see. There we go. I put a little piece of Stampin' Dimensional onto the back of each piece. And to do this, I actually did have to cut my Stampin' Dimensionals. And then you just peel off the backing and go ahead and stick it right on top. Now, the reason I colored my robot underneath, even though I was going to be popping up some pieces is because when you do look at this card at an angle, you can see the pieces of the robot underneath, and I didn't want it to be uncolored. So there you can see I now have him popped up. So I now want to go ahead and mount him onto a piece of pumpkin pie cardstock, and my pumpkin pie cardstock is 3 inches by, or sorry, 3¼ inches by about 2½ inches. So I'm going to grab some snail adhesive, and I'm just going to stick that on like so. Next thing you're going to do is to grab your designer paper, and this is from our Occasions Mini Catalog, and it's a paper stack, and it's called the Sweet Pea Designer Paper Stack. It's a fantastic deal, has a lot of different patterns of paper on there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to figure out where I want to place my robot on my card. I'm not going to place him quite yet. I'm just going to use that as a guide so that I can stick down this strip. So that's what it's going to look like. I can now go ahead and take some dimensionals, and I'm going to stick my matted robot piece. As you can see, I've now taken the backing off my dimensionals, and I'm just going to stick this piece onto my card like so. You can now go ahead and take your chipboard piece and grab some mini glue dots, and you just want to press your chipboard number in a few places directly onto your mini glue dots. Now you do want to do this somewhat carefully, because if you're not careful, the glue dot can actually remain sticking to the roll, and you end up wrecking it because it pulls off a little bit of the chipboard. So there you can see I've now got my number on there. So the next thing I want to do is to pierce my holes for my brads. So I'm just going to try to space my holes fairly evenly. And I'm piercing my holes with my paper piercing tool and my foam mat. I'm now going to go ahead and insert a silver brad into each hole. When I designed this card, I deliberately wanted to incorporate a lot of metal into it so that you really had that feel because of the robot. So now that your brads are inserted, you can go ahead and open up the prongs in the back. And just make sure as you're doing this, if necessary, you rotate the prong that's on the far outer edge so that it doesn't overhang the edge of the card. So once you've opened up the prongs in the back, we can now go ahead and stick a Stampin' Dimensional in each corner. And I also like to stick one in the center just to give it a little bit of support. And then go ahead and peel off the backing from your dimensional. And then you're going to take your Taken with Teal card. This is a 4¼ by 11-inch card that was folded in half to create a 4¼ by 5½ card. So you can now go ahead and stick your card front onto the card base. And that's all there is to it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to stamping with you again.